10 financial documents you should hang on to forever. Although the Internal Revenue Service recommends keeping tax records for 3 years, you should keep some pieces of financial paperwork longer. In today's program, we tell you 10 key financial documents you should hang on to forever. From your birth certificate to your paid-off car loan statements, all of these documents may or may not have a financial nature. Nevertheless, they can have a monetary value under some circumstances, especially when it comes to proving kinship, for example, in a will or a life insurance payout procedure, or demonstrating privilege eligibility as can be necessary when applying for Social Security benefits or when a driver needs to upgrade from SR22 car insurance to regular automobile coverage. Depending upon your situation as well as the sophistication and nature of the stored documents, you can keep your paperwork secure online, external hard drive and emails, or on the cloud, or offline in a room in your house, in a locked fireproof cabinet, at the post office, in a safe deposit box, etc. Thankfully, the IRS and most contractual counterparties nowadays accept digital documentation as legally valid and binding as the originals, so you don't have to store boxes of paperwork. Watch now for the 10 pieces of financial paperwork you should never throw away or shred. I'll be right back. Welcome back, folks, to another edition of Sweetie Kiwi. I hope you are doing fantastic. I'm doing marvelous. And if you are doing as marvelous as I am, go grab a cup of coffee or tea or vodka and let's roll. The first document the first financial documents you should hang on to forever are estate planning documents. You want to retain this until completely updated. If you just need a revision, be sure to keep the full documents. Now, so estate planning documents include things like wills, ethical wills, trusts, healthcare directives, powers of attorney, final arrangement, and other estate planning documents, right? Now, what is estate planning? Estate planning is the systematic approach to organizing your personal and financial affairs in order to deal with the possibility of mental incapacity and certain debt. Let me just repeat that. Death and mental incapacity. A lot of people, when you talk about estate planning, they think automatically about death. No. Sometimes things happen, life happens. If you happen to be, God forbid, if you happen to be mentally incapacitated, in other words, you lose your brain or something and you can't function, you can't reason anymore, you got to have a will. You got to have an estate planning process in case to take care of that, right? So depending upon your current family and financial situation, your foundational estate plan will include 4 or 5 legal estate planning documents. So let me quickly kind of go through those here. Now, you have will-based estate planning. Will-based estate planning, you have things like last will and testament. You have advanced medical directives. So if something happens, how the medical community and your relatives should handle you. Living will, financial power of attorney. That's for will-based estate planning. Now let's go to trust-based estate planning, right? So if your current family and or financial situation warrant the need for a more sophisticated estate plan, then you will need 5 important legal documents, and those are pour-over will, revocable living trust, advanced medical directive, living will, and the financial power of attorney. Now, I'm listing all these documents here because if you happen to fall into one of those categories, you want to retain those documents. All right. Now, there is also a last will and testament or pour-over will. Now, if you have a will-based estate plan, then your last will and testament will contain a detailed list of instructions as to how your property should be distributed after you die or after you become mentally incapacitated. Now, if you have minor children, you also want to have some provisions for designating a guardian for your children. Let's move on quickly to revocable living trust. Now, revocable living trust is a document that provides us a detailed set of instructions covering 3 important periods of your life. So what happened when while you are alive and doing well? What happens if you become mentally incapacitated? And then what happened after your death? All right. Another document you want to keep if you happen to fall in that category is something called advanced medical directive. Now, in some states, they use the terms medical power of attorney. So if you hear advanced medical directive or if you hear advanced medical directive or medical power of attorney or designation of healthcare surrogate, those three terms are interchangeable. They mean the same thing. So in essence, you are designating a healthcare agent to make medical decisions for you if for any reason you are unable to make them for yourself, right? This can also be used to designate someone to serve as your guardian or conservator in the event a court determines that you have become mentally incapacitated. All right, quickly move on to living will. Now, the living will, as we all know, this is the most standard here. It contains a written set of instructions to your physician as to whether or not you want to receive life-sustaining procedure if you have been diagnosed with a terminal condition, end-stage condition, or are in a persistent vegetative state, right? So this is for this. And the last document you might want to keep is the financial power of attorney. All right. Again, we are still in the category of estate planning documents here. All right. So the financial power of attorney allows you to delegate to the person of your choice the ability to manage assets that are titled in your individual name. Right here, I'm talking about retirement plans, and in some cases, assets that are titled in joint names. All right. I'll be right back right after this. Don't go anywhere. Okay. Welcome back, folks, to another edition of Sweetie Kiwi. We're still talking about the financial documents you should hang on to forever. Financial documents number 2 you should hang on to forever: tax returns and related documentation. All right, this is very important. Tax returns, anything that is, if you're married, if one of your spouses dies, divorce and custody agreements, alimony payments, prior audits, property and home documents, foreign income or investments, bank record and receipts. All these things you need to keep. You need to be very careful to keep them because not just for the IRS, there's something those are part of your financial documents. So you want to really, really keep them, even though the IRS in some cases wants you to keep those for up to 3 years, and in some cases up to 7 years, you still want to keep them. Again, the idea here is not to have masses of paperwork with you. You can digitize those papers and keep them on the cloud or in an email. All right. So documents number 2, tax returns and related documentation. Documents number 3, health insurance policies and documents. This is very important, folks. So what do I mean here? Anything really related to health insurance policy is very important until coverage ends or is canceled. You want to keep the following. Again, I'm talking about the benefits of health. Now, you want to keep the health insurance policy, the master documents, and any related documentation that covers things like, deductibles, emergency services, participating provider payments, non-participating provider payments, what is covered, exclusions, limitations, terms of the policy, right? I'm talking about things like grace period, modification of coverage, reinstatement, legal actions, etc. Waiting periods, in case you want to add someone to the policy, right? So that paperwork needs to be kept. You need to keep it. All right. Number 4, the 4th financial documents you should hang on to forever: general insurance documents. So in the last section, I was talking about health insurance policy and documents. Here, I'm just talking about general insurance documents. So all kinds of insurance, right? So I'm talking about slips, contracts, policies, certificates of entry, or other insurance documents evidencing or constituting the insurance agreement. For example, auto insurance, right? Auto insurance is a requirement in most places if you own a car. So you want to keep that evidentiary matter. You want to keep that paperwork. Health insurance, we already talked about that, right? Disability insurance, homeowners insurance, life insurance. So the thing is that depending upon the states where you live in, you should or you must retain for up to 6 years after the policy has been canceled, which is, again, and this will protect you from any issues that may arise down the road concerning a claim, right? Now, another thing you want to, one of the reasons why you also want to keep the documentation for a long time is that clauses. There's something called clauses. Now, clauses are important in the documentation. What are clauses? I'm talking about confidentiality, force majeure, right? What they call act of God, right? Indemnity, intellectual property ownership, very, very key. Mutual indemnification, mutual non-disparagement, non-circumvention, non-compete, non-solicitation, and last but not the least, termination. So you want to keep all the slips and contracts and an addenda to an insurance policy. You want to keep those because, again, you never know, right? So you want to keep those with you. I will be right back right after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, folks, to another edition of Sweetie Kiwi. We're still continuing our conversation about the 10 financial documents you should hang on to forever. We are here talking about number 5. Number 5, credit card statements and documents. So you know, if you use those documents for tax purposes, you want to keep them for 6 years. Otherwise, you can shred the documents and receipts after reconciling your statement, right? Now, the good news here is that you can keep your credit card statement. You don't even have to keep them because a lot of credit card companies allow you to access your credit card statements up to 3 years or 4 years. In some cases, 5 years. So you don't have to keep them around. You don't have to digitize them. What I would recommend you do is download them from the credit card provider's website and save them in an email or on the cloud or on a USB key, right? So that's really the way to go about it. Number 6, loan records. You want to be able to keep your loan records. I'm talking from mortgages to student and car loans. Loan records should be kept indefinitely as proof that your loan is paid off. Folks, this is important. I'm going to repeat it again. You want to keep loan records as proof that your loan, that you have paid off that loan. All right. Now, keeping proof of a loan payoff is important in the event that there is an issue with the records of a creditor. You know, like for instance, let's say you have a lender who has been acquired by another company, and that lender has a problem in their records. You need to keep your loan payoff so that you can show it in court or to the new company that, okay, everything is fine. I don't owe you guys anything, right? This is very important. And another reason why you want to keep your loan records, your loan payoff documents always with you is that, you know, financial service entities, banks, insurance companies, they frequently sell loans to loan servicing firms. All right. So this is very important. Now, when it comes to mortgage, there are 3 things you need to keep: the deed, the mortgage, or what they call the deed of trust, and the promissory notes, and the closing disclosure. Let me repeat that. Deed. So, you know, the U.S. government wants you to hang on to any deeds as long as you own the property. All right. So, and then, of course, if you paid off the mortgage and the deed to your property has been recorded in land records, you can toss those documents away. So that's number 1, deed. Number 2, mortgage or deed of trust and the promissory note, right? So much like your deed, you want to keep those documents for at least as long as you own the property, right? And the third thing is the closing disclosure. Now, you should hold on to your closing disclosure for at least a year after closing on your mortgage. All right, because the disclosure shows things like the fees you paid to the lender and third parties, as well as whether or not you paid discount points, right? So this is very important. Now, there are three things you want to pay, you want to keep, even if you don't have a mortgage, right? So things like purchase contracts, seller disclosures. This is very important. Home warranty, if you have a home warranty, right? Home inspection reports. This is also important. You should keep the home inspection report for 2 to 3 years, sometimes 4 years, especially in the West, because those reports are likely to convey information about the ages and conditions of systems and appliances, among other things. All right. So this is why you want to pay attention to that. I'll be right back right after this. Don't go anywhere. Okay. Welcome back, folks, to another edition of Sweetie Kiwi. We're still here talking about the 10 financial documents you should hang on to forever. Number 7, rental agreements. You want to retain rental agreements up to 6 years after the lease is terminated. After 6 years. In some states, that duration goes to 8, but average 6 years. Now, here I'm talking about things like tenant files, right? So the landlord and property owners are responsible for maintaining records related to current and past tenants. So what are the important tenant files you need to retain? And this is if you are the landlord. So the tenant rental application and screening reports, correspondence regarding approval or denial of rental application, the signed lease or rental agreement, plus any changes or updates added during tenancy, security deposit refunds, and an itemized list for any deductions, move-in inspection paperwork completed by the tenant and the landlord, move-out inspection paperwork, rent payment records, rental fee records, pet policy agreements, written requests for entry. So the lease violation, eviction paperwork, legal notices, and corresponding actions. All emails and correspondence with the tenant. This is very important. You have to keep those. So anything related to rental agreements, you want to keep forever. You never know. Again, when it comes to litigation, you want to be able to have the proof that the court might ask you, so you can quickly respond. Number 8, investment records. So when it comes to investment, I'm talking about things like trade confirmation statements and other related documents. You want to, the law wants you to keep original trade confirmations up to 6 years after the sale of the security. That's the investment, right? If you're able to keep that, this provides proof on cost basis, which can help you calculate capital loss and gains, right? Now, another thing you want to keep for a long term when it comes to investments are things like copies of your annual IRS Form 1099s, the one that shows dividends, the DIV-1099. The transaction records confirming your purchase or sale of stocks, bonds, and other investments. You should be able to get that with your brokerage firm. Copies of your federal and state return going back 7 years, along with supporting documentation. Copies of your IRA and 401k plan documents, right? Because at your death, your beneficiaries will need this info to determine how to take distributions from your account. So that's very important. Number 9, bank account records. So anything like canceled checks, right? Receipts. You want to keep those until account statements are received and reconciled. Retained checks, receipts, those should be kept with statements for up to 6 years. All right. Now, of course, after you reconcile your bank account, the only checks and receipts that should be kept are those that pertain to a major purchase, right? And or are tax related. So anything else you can destroy. So if you buy a car, if you buy those major, I'm talking major purchase, I'm talking 3 digits at least, 3 digits, 4 digits. You want to keep those checks. All right. If you made the payments electronically, you want to keep the statements. Okay. Now, number 10, personal papers. Very important. What do I mean by personal papers? I'm talking about, things like birth certificates, social security cards, marriage licenses, divorce decrees, and military records, right? Now, this may not have a financial nature per se, but they are used in different ways to verify your identity and are required to receive a driver's license and passport. And those documents, as we know, have an impact on your financial life, right? So things like, so the original should be kept forever in a secure location. Here, I'm not talking about even digitizing this. No, you need to have the originals. You need to have the hard copy. We haven't moved to an electronic society yet, so you still want to keep those, right? You can't be like, oh, here's my electronic ID. No, you want to take out the paper ID and show it to whoever wants to see it, right? So this is very important. Now, granted, if you are required to show this document, usually a copy is sufficient, but the original should always be stored away in a safe location. All right, I'll be right back right after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, folks, to another edition of Sweetie Kiwi. Today we talked about 10 financial documents you should hang on to forever. I want to quickly give you a recap of those 10 financial documents: estate planning documents, tax returns and related documentations, health insurance policy and documents, insurance documents, credit card statements and paperwork. Number 6, loan records. Number 7, rental agreements. Number 8, investment records. Number 9, bank account records. Number 10, personal papers. All right, this is very important. Now, here is today's call to action. If you want to have good control of your finances, keeping good records is one of the first steps, right? So if your records if your records are somehow disorganized, you can't be able to properly lead your life, especially your financial life. All right, so here are a few tips to help you organize your papers better. Try to have a central location for all statements. Anything like tax forms, receipts and documents, statement, just have a central location for those. All right, try to label everything, clearly label everything. So records from each tax year should be kept together and clearly labeled so you can quickly identify and grab them when needed. If you do things electronically, try to use the folder system, right? Label each folder so this is tax year 2020, tax year 2019, tax year 2021, 2022, and so forth, and so on and so forth. All right, file everything immediately, right? So the thing is that don't hang on to receipts and paperwork planning on filing them later. That's just procrastination, and we're trying to stay away from that. You want to keep active files accessible, right? So I would say if you are in the year, let's say 2020 or 2021, try to keep files that date back to 2018 accessible. Anything beyond that, you can just file away. All right. Yeah. Now consider digitizing stuff. As I've said it throughout this show, you want to scan to save time, to save space and time, right? So by digitizing stuff, you're saving a lot of time and a lot of space. All right. Now, the organized electronic records the same way you would paper records. Very important. You also want to always keep security in mind, right? So if you move on from whether you're storing things offline or online, you always have the security risk. So you want to think about that. If you want to store things offline, so maybe you might want to think about a safe deposit box or at a post office box, right? Or in a very secure area in your house. And if you want to do things online, you want to start thinking about a cloud. You want to start thinking about protecting those folders with a password you can remember, right? So those are stuff that you could do to protect yourself. And another thing is that you always want to know what to keep and what to shred, right? Because the idea here is not to hang on to all types of paperwork, but just a few. Okay, so try to do that. So this is it for today, and folks, I really appreciate you listening to us. Oh yeah, we also have a pro tip. I will give you a pro tip right after this. I'm going anywhere. Here is today's pro tip. We've talked about a lot of financial documents, but you also want to retain things like your diploma, your education credentials, or certifications. Those are very important. You also want to have a list of previous addresses and landlord contact info if you are a renter, because you might need this in future transactions and future tenancy transactions. You also want to have the contact info for people who can verify that you lived at previous addresses, right? This is very useful for background checks and security clearances. All right, folks, thank you so much for your attention. Stay marvelous.